I'm like the slot right before lunch, so I will get us out of here in like 20 minutes, unless everybody has a lot of questions, but I don't expect that. And I have an official scroller who's going to scroll through my presentation because it's in PDF, not PowerPoint. All right, next slide, please. So this is coordinating cyber incidents. Initially, this was a presentation utilizing Star Trek, Captain Jean-Luc Picard. Unfortunately, as it turns out, Capital One doesn't own the rights to the bald captain of the Enterprise, so I've made it more generic. Any Star Trek fans, though? Cool, let's catch up afterwards. Definitely TNG is my favorite, followed by Deep Space Nine. Not really a big fan of Voyager or anything kind of new. Of course, I'm at Capital One. I manage our cyber incident management team. I'm working on my MBA at Virginia Tech. Any Hokies? There we go. 1, 2, 2, 3. There we go. Thank you. And I love sci-fi, of course. Black Mirror has been kind of my favorite show, and Altered Carbon. Anybody seen Altered Carbon? Excellent. I love Altered Carbon. I love that they're doing kind of this sci-fi noir Blade Runner-esque show. So hopefully this is second season. Next slide, please. So basically, we're talking about coordinating and communicating cyber incidents. I'll start off with why this matters, and then we'll go to the kind of before the shit hits the fan, or stuff hits the fan, and after stuff hits the fan. Next slide, please. So at Capital One, we've set up a cyber incident management team. Basically, this is the team that works really closely with our incident responders. We thought it was, like many companies, we're kind of finding that you need people who can actually respond to the hackers and take samples and delete malware and conduct forensics. And then you need people who can kind of talk about what they're doing and give them air cover. So I'm one of those air cover people. So I like talk up what we're doing and I say, everything's all right. It's not terrible. Here's our plan. At Capital One, we found 1 to 3 works, and other companies I've worked at found 1 to 3 works. And really, we're looking at cybersecurity generalists, right? That's people who kind of know a lot about cybersecurity, but don't want to get too in the weeds with anything. Next slide, please. So basically, why it's important to communicate your cyber incidents to the enterprise. At Capital One, we really feel that cyber should lead cyber for the enterprise, right? So that means we're in charge, right? That means when things go down, we step up, we communicate confidently, we know what's going on, and we have this 360-degree view, right? The business is paying for a service. The business is paying to feel safe and to be safe. And so it's our job to make sure that we can articulate how we're protecting the business and what we're doing to respond, right? Also, simplicity. Any kind of complex story, when bad cyber incidents occur, it gets really complex, right? I mean, look at Equifax. It was really confusing what was going on with the company, especially as somebody looking from the outside, and I'm sure it was confusing inside the company as well. So if you tell one story, and if you have somebody who's kind of that clearinghouse, right, you're able to bring much more people to the table. And that means your business leaders, that means the people running your applications, that means the CEO feels like he or she understands what's going on, and it makes us as cyber a lot more important to the company. Next slide, please. Oh yeah, and I always like to pause if this is boring for anyone. So I used to do this thing in conferences where I would pretend to use the restroom in the middle of the presentation and not come back, of course, because it was boring. But if it's boring for anyone, now is your opportunity, and I will not be offended if you get up and pretend to use the restroom. Any takers? All right, so I will assume all of you are semi-interested or you are comfortable. Next slide, please.
That is your next slide.
Oh, sorry. Good call. So a lot of what we're doing before cyber incidents occur is socializing our enterprise response plan. Of course, everyone in the company has weighed in on this, or at least everybody who needs to weigh in on it has weighed in on it. Training people, telling them, okay, when a cyber incident occurs, this is your role, right? This is what cyber is going to do. This is what the commercial line of business is going to do. This is what our card line of business is going to do. and this is what our application support teams are going to do. I spend a lot of my time, and hopefully many of you are spending a lot of your time meeting your IT and business leadership, right? Because you don't want the first time they see you is they're panicked and you're panicked, and it's probably not going to be a really fun time, right? So we try to build relationships with all of our IT leaders, people in charge of our desktops, people in charge of our servers, our AWS. Make sure they know you before stuff happens, as well as your business teams, right? Because these are the people actually making money for the company, money paying your salary. So you want to make sure they know who you are and they know what you're going to do. We try to take our network, not our IT network, but our personal network really seriously by mapping out, okay, these are our key stakeholders, these are the people that are important to our success, and then really tracking how many times have we talked with them, right? Have we met them in the last couple quarters? If we haven't, then relationships start to fall apart, right? And you don't want to be forming relationships in the middle of a cyber incident. Tabletop exercises are actually kind of boring at this point. Anybody do tabletop exercises? And they kind of get boring, so we're trying to move to more drills, right? So I won't tell my analysts when we're going to do it, but in the next week, we're just going to run an emergency call and wake people up and get people on the phone. And that's actually one of the ways we train Capital One Cyber. If you want to move up a level to a higher level, senior cyber incident manager or something, we tell you, okay, in the next week, you're going to get a random phone call. And we have 4 people sitting in a room pretending to be angry business leaders. And you have to just respond and start taking questions and start kind of coordinating the cyber incident. So that is a lot of fun to do if you like kind of throwing people in the fire, which I do. Next slide, please. So at the beginning, Capital One, we really stress pausing and really getting a good understanding of what's going on with the cyber incident, okay? I know a lot of people just start reacting, right? Oh, I know, I've seen this malware, I know what to do, or I've seen this ransomware, I know what to do, I know how to respond. But what I found is if you wait 20 minutes and just figure out what's going on and start writing down the story, right? It'll make things a lot smoother. So we think, pausing and figuring out the story is a lot more important than just starting to respond like a robot, okay? A lot of our cyber incident managers would kind of have this relationship with our IR team. I'm sure many of you do too, where we like to challenge each other. If something's not making sense, speaking up, of course, that's kind of table stakes in cyber. And then this is kind of what we do for our summaries. So, always the bottom line up front. We always try to connect it to the line of business. So what line of business is impacted? What's the impact? What are our next steps? Short, active sentences. Some people like to write these long, flowery sentences and really get technical. And the C2 server did this, and this was the communication. But, we want to keep it as high level as possible because, like I said, that brings more people to the table. And, of course, limiting technical jargon. And then we try to speak really, at this time, right? If you make those definitive statements, of course, everybody knows, are those good or bad? Yeah, precisely. So they might come and bite you in the ass. So if you're making a definitive statement, make sure it's really true or speak tentatively. This is what we know at this time. Next slide, please. So at Capital One, we have our own ticket management system that we built in-house. Capital One loves building things. So we use Jarvis, like the butler. Jarvis Incident Management System. This is kind of this is really basic stuff, right, that everybody is recording most likely in your own incident management systems. So I'm not going to go through that too much. Next slide, please. I love this. I love the scrolling. The really good scrolling. Yes, question. So we've actually switched our terms. We define an incident as a compromised or unauthorized intrusion into our network that requires containment and remediation. At Capital One, an event is actually a higher level than an incident. An event is like multiple incidents or one incident that impacts multiple lines of business. So we have alert, incident, event. Alerts, many people use alerts for events. You can adopt deadline. Does that help? And then we also have our kind of our own severity scale that we use impact data. So the analysts, when they're first starting a case, they're going to figure out what's the LOB impact, what's the functional impact, is an application down, is there no functional impact, how it got into the network, is the actor an APT or like a hacktivist or like a script kiddie. And then Jarvis will crunch these categories. Of course, this is from the NIST incident management standard. We'll crunch these categories and determine a severity level that it suggests to the analyst. Severity 5 being, of course, the lowest. Severity 0 being, we are like, I'm probably out of a job, or I have a job for a really long time because it got really terrible. Next slide, please. So a lot of our work, occurs on bridges, right? You know, like, this is usually at like 11 p.m. at night. We get a call, and someone's been sitting on something all day, and then they're like, oh, maybe I should escalate this. Has that ever happened to anybody here? Or is that right? It's like, I always scroll to the first email, and I see you were talking about this since 9 in the morning, but you're calling me at 11 p.m. at night. So a lot of our work gets done on bridge calls, where we'll pull all the resources we need, like the network team, workstation team, database team, privacy, legal, etc. And we try to have a very strict way of running these calls, which I'm going to share. Like anything, we always do kind of a pre-call, which means before we do anything, right, we pause and we figure out what's the story we're going to tell, how are we going to tell it, and then we kind of brief ourselves to make sure we can brief it. It's really important for cyber to show up and take command, right? Like I said, the business is paying for your information security department, the business is paying for all of us to be in charge, right? They want someone that says, hey, hold on, stop freaking out. We're in charge, we have a plan, here's what we're going to do. So by setting the tone and taking command of the call at the very beginning, right, that really gets us off to a good start. And personally, I like to stand up. You know, these are big calls. You might have 40, 50 people all trying to talk at once, right? Has anybody been on one of those chaotic calls? All these network teams, everybody's talking randomly. I actually found that standing up and projecting into the call makes you sound a lot more confident, and so does smiling, because you don't sound as panicked. You know, like, oh, the firewall's going down, but that's okay. And it really works. Like, people can hear the calm in your voice. If you're calm, everyone else will remain calm. Your VPs will remain calm. Your directors will remain calm. If you freak out, it's really not going to be fun, and people will not be happy the next morning. Establishing the common operating picture. If you control the story, you control the incident, right? In terms of managing it. Now, I can't tell you, you can control the story, but if the APT is still in your network, like, you haven't really done a lot. But at least you control the story, so that's a really good start. You can start figuring out what's going on. We do a lot of work stream management, so we set 3 work streams. Work stream A, contain. Work stream B, eradicate. Work stream C, talk to our legal department about what happened, right? And then you can, then you get started and go through these work streams. I love sharing my screen. I have all my analysts share their screens. Because has anybody been on those calls when somebody joins, like in the middle of the call, and they say, hey, this is Bob from the Wintel team. What's going on? They're like, dude, we just went over this for like 20 minutes. And then you have to restart and re-explain everything. So if you're sharing your screen, you just tell them, hey, read the screen. And eventually they get used to doing that. Next slide, please. Oh, Jesus. So on the bridge, we like to use a lot of approval-based action. So cyber, at least at our company, shouldn't be like taking down a web application, right? We should ask the business, hey, or we recommend to the business, due to X, Y, or Z, we recommend you take this application down for the next 2 hours while we apply an emergency patch. Providing updates every 15 minutes, even if you don't have an update. A lot of times people will try to control the call, right? And so there'll be this dead silence, this awkward silence. And like somebody will speak up and start like controlling things who's not cyber, what I found. So make sure you stay in control of the call. Even if there's nothing, if there's that awkward silence, always asking like, okay team, what are we not considering? Like you're not supposed to have all the answers if you're leading that incident response, right? You're not meant to have all the answers, but you are meant to kind of facilitate. And okay, this application security team, what are they thinking during this incident? They might have a really good idea. Has anybody ever done this? You're on a call and somebody's like speaking out IP addresses? And it's like the most confusing thing, right? And like everyone's trying to type down what IP address is he saying, or like sharing some kind, and it's just, what did you say? What did you say? So just put that in chat. And I like, if anybody starts doing that on a call that I'm running or my analysts are running, we immediately tell them, hey, can you please stick that in chat? Because it gets really funny when everyone's saying, was that 1.3 or .4, .7? A lot of people say, I think, on these bridges, right? Well, I think the hacker is gone. Okay, but we're not really here to think, we're here to know. So you can think that, but then we try to fact check each other. Well, how will you know that's true? And then, of course, I like to remind people, always escalate. If things aren't getting done, if it's a severe incident, you should be calling your VP, you should have their number, you should keep going up the chain all the way to the CEO if things aren't getting done. Of course, hopefully that would not be the case. Next slide, please. Then when we get to leadership, so usually these calls are like 11 p.m., so leadership doesn't really want to be waking up at 2 a.m., but the next morning we might we'll provide that perspective, the context. We're paid in cyber, I'm sure at your companies as well, they're not paying for robots, right? They're paying for people to give perspective. How bad is this really? How long were they in the network? What do we need to do to get them out of the network, right? We always like to do one recommendation with 3 options. So our recommendation is to, take these servers down for a week and, let us do more forensics. There's another option, though, which is that we don't do that and we just wipe it and move on. And then really up to the business, and we'll present, well, this is what happens if you do it, this is what happens if you don't. But let the business leaders make decisions. And always present the recommendation first. If it's A, B, and C, A should be the one you secretly want, not C or not B, right? We always like to tell leadership the next update is going to be in 2 hours so they don't keep bugging you. It's even more, probably the most annoying thing that you might experience is when people keep asking for updates, right? Say, well, the next update is in an hour and we'll get you an update then. Of course, if it's your CEO or something, go ahead. 10 minutes left. Question.
Do you find that the leadership are happy to make that call, or are they looking to the security team or the CISO to make that call, even after you've proposed the different options?
What I've experienced is the CISO and the leadership should be making a... Question is, who should be making the decisions? Should it be the cyber analyst? Should it be the CISO? Should it be the business leadership? What I've experienced is your CISO and the business leadership should come to an agreement, but at the end, the business are the ones making the money, right? They are in charge of how the company is run. So we try to, we do that, right? We'll lead cyber for the company, but in the end, it's the company's decision to either drink the water or, gallop off, leading the horse to water reference. Next slide, please. Oh. It was like the one mess up scroll, so that's okay. At the end, what we found really useful is having a cyber problem management team. Question? Yeah, so when we have the question is if there's a 0-day or something of significance, is there an established protocol? We have a team that runs with those. It's not incident management, we call it event management. But it's almost the exact same thing. Get a bridge going, get all the people together, talk about the work streams, divvy up work streams, end the call, check in the next morning or the next, So we have a cyber problem management team. This is a newer function at Capital One, but it's awesome because I don't want to be waiting for things for 3 days, right? I want to be on to the next thing. This is the team we push stuff off to. They'll track stuff for weeks or months or however long it takes to do some kind of patching of thousands. I mean, that would only be a day or something, but something that takes a really long time. This team are the ones who will kind of track that down. At the end of the incident, we write run report. We let everybody have their feedback, and then we finalize the report. I think that's the best way. That's the one story. There's no more stories, right? That's the report. That's what happened. There's no more opinions. And then, of course, people love timelines. Next slide, please. Lastly, this is what we're working on now. So we've kind of established this framework and how we run things. We're working on really maturing our metrics. So, what are the quality of our incident notifications? Is it is the writing really shit, or is it good? Is it understandable? Can you read it and figure out what's going on? How long it takes us to write things is another thing. Like some people spend hours trying to make this flowery language and make it perfect, but really what's important is to get information out to the company, what's going on. And one of our key risk indicators is how many incidents are we managing at one time. So if we're managing like 10 incidents at once, it might start getting a little risky for the company because we may not be able to keep up with that level of churn. Finally, what we're working on in the future is automating and augmenting our notifications. So Capital One, of course, loves AI and machine learning. So if one day I'm replaced by AI, cool. I don't think it's possible. They don't have the charm that I do. With one chuckle, that's fine. But we are working on augmenting our notifications. So I don't have to write everything by hand. Machine can like start writing information, and then I can just fill in the gaps. And that is, scroll please, it. Capital One, we have a booth, of course, if you haven't seen us. If you want to talk to me about anything, hopefully work-related. Here's my email address if you're interested in hearing more about how Capital One manages cyber incidents. Are there any questions? Yes?
Does anything change? You said it's hard, but I assume this is more for backroom events, incidents, customer-facing, more of everything, faster?
Yeah, so the question is about customer-facing, and yes, it's more of everything and faster, and we bring in more people, PR, legal, compliance, et cetera, to the table, but we run the same framework and the same calls and the same people. Yes? Yeah, we do. So the question is arbitrary timelines, and like the legal team is like, hey, we need an update in 20 minutes about everything that happened. Well, that's actually not, it's really hard to do, right? We're not that quick. But the way we combat that is upfront. So I've got all these relationships. I know all the legal people, and I've explained to them how long they should expect things. And so they know to ask that would be kind of silly, so they don't. So that's what's really helped us. Anything else? Then please, enjoy lunch and stop by Capital One booth. Thank you. Oh, I'm sorry.
That was Jeffrey Blevins.